Ever get the feeling that some historical figures we think we know are really buried under, well, myth? Like we're missing the real story?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time.
Today we're diving into one of those figures, Mark Antony.
Ah, Mark Antony.
We're going beyond Shakespeare,
Definitely beyond Shakespeare.
going deep with Professor Jeffrey Tatum's biography.
And, we've got some amazing firsthand accounts to work with, too.
Okay, so Mark Antony, most people know him from, well, Shakespeare.
Right, the plays.
But was there more to the man?
Absolutely. He was much more complex than the Shakespearean image. That's what's so captivating about him.
So where do we even start to uncover the real Mark Antony?
Well, we have to go back to the sources, right?
The raw stuff.
Exactly. Things like Cicero's letters and Plutarch's writings. We even look at coins and inscriptions from his time.
Wow, like having a time machine, right?
In a way, yes. And these sources, they really give us a glimpse into Antony's character. He wasn't just some power-hungry general.
There was more to him.
He was a Roman noble, a skilled soldier, and apparently quite the captivating orator.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Just imagine, for a second, being in the Roman Senate, listening to him speak. He could really sway a crowd, inspire loyalty, even fear.
Right.
And to think, this man, commanding legions, debating with Cicero, he came from a background steeped in Roman tradition, born into the elite, with family connections to consuls.
Wow, Colin.
Those were positions of immense power in the Republic.
So kind of like a political dynasty.
Yes, exactly, with expectations, a legacy to uphold, but the sources also hint at a wilder side to Antony. His younger years were, let's say, full of partying and scandals.
A bit of a party boy, huh? Makes you wonder how that image played into his political career later on.
It definitely adds a layer of complexity to his personality. Was that just a persona? Or was it genuine? Historians still debate this, actually.
I bet. But one thing seems clear. Antony was ambitious.
Oh, without a doubt. He wasn't content just enjoying his privilege.
Yeah.
He wanted more.
More power.
More influence. And that ambition led him eastward to the Roman frontier.
He wasn't afraid of a challenge.
No, not at all. He went to the eastern Mediterranean, serving under Gabinius in Syria.
Syria. That must have been quite the experience.
It was a pivotal moment for Antony. Think about it. He's exposed to new cultures, complex political alliances, and the realities of managing a vast and often volatile province.
Shaping his worldview.
Exactly. This is where he meets influential families in Judea, even Egypt.
Years before Cleopatra.
Years before Cleopatra. It's like the pieces of his future were falling into place right there in Syria.
So he's networking, honing his military skills, learning about a region that would be central to his later life.
Yes, to all of that. And when he returns to Rome, he's not that young nobleman anymore. He's a seasoned commander with valuable connections and still that hunger for power.
And this is where Julius Caesar comes in.
Right. Antony becomes a key ally to Caesar during the Gallic Wars.
Caesar needed someone he could trust back in Rome.
Exactly. And Antony was perfect for that role. He became Caesar's voice in the Senate, advocating for his policies, blocking anyone trying to curb his power.
So he's playing the political game, a high-stakes one at that.
Oh, absolutely. And remember, the Roman Republic was already showing cracks. The power struggles between Caesar and his rivals, they were pushing Rome closer to the brink.
And Antony's right in the middle of it.
Right in the thick of it. He even held the position of tribune of the plebs.
What did that entail?
It gave him real influence. He could veto actions of the Senate. Imagine that, the power to directly challenge the Senate itself.
Wow. Was he just loyal to Caesar? Or did he have his own ambitions?
That's the million-dollar question. It's likely a mix of loyalty, political maneuvering, and maybe, just maybe, a sense of his own destiny.
And then, of course, the Roman Civil War breaks out.
And Antony plays a crucial role. As Caesar's representative in Rome, his actions definitely escalated tensions with the Senate.
He wasn't afraid to stir the pot.
Not at all. He was bold, even provocative. He used his position as tribune to push Caesar's agenda, challenging the authority of Pompey and the Senate.
It must have been a tense time in Rome. Everything felt like it was about to break.
It was a powder keg. Every action, every speech, every alliance could tip the scales toward peace or plunge Rome into chaos.
And we know what happened. Caesar crossed the Rubicon.
The die was cast.
How much did Antony push Caesar towards that decision?
Well, that's something historians still debate. Some believe Antony actively encouraged Caesar to march on Rome, believing it was the only way to secure his power. Others see him as more of a loyal lieutenant, just carrying out Caesar's will.
Interesting. But either way, Antony was there with Caesar when the legions marched on Rome.
Side by side, marking the start of a bloody conflict.
And Antony, he wasn't just a figurehead during the war.
No, he commanded troops alongside Caesar in key battles, like Pharsalus.
Showing his skills as a commander.
Exactly. And even more telling, Caesar trusted Antony to govern Italy while he was away chasing his enemies. That's huge. To be left in charge of the heart of the Republic during such a chaotic time. It shows how much Caesar relied on him.
But even the strongest alliances can break. And for Antony, that happened on the Ides of March 44 BC.
With the assassination of Caesar.
A pivotal moment, not just for Antony, but for Rome itself. What a shock that must have been, the fear, the confusion.
And Antony, he was spared by the conspirators. He was left to pick up the pieces.
It's almost like a scene from Shakespeare.
It really is. A sudden shift in power, a city teetering on the edge of chaos. And Antony, a survivor, right at the heart of it all.
What a cliffhanger. We'll have to pick this up next time and see how we navigated that situation.
Absolutely. It's a story you won't want to miss.
So last time we left Antony in a pretty delicate spot.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Caesar's just been assassinated.
Right.
But Antony, he's spared.
By the skin of his teeth, really.
And Rome's in chaos. What happens next?
Well, Antony, he's a survivor, right?
He always seems to land on his feet.
He does, doesn't he? And this is where things get really interesting. He had, well, a lot going for him. He had the support of the legions, the political skills, a deep understanding of Caesar's legacy.
So a lot of power at his fingertips.
A lot of power. But he was also surrounded by enemies. And, well, Rome was teetering on the edge. It was a very precarious situation.
It's like the whole system's about to collapse.
Exactly. And then a new player enters the scene.
Oh, who's that?
A young man who's going to change everything. Octavian. Caesar's adopted son and heir.
Wow, Octavian. Talk about a power struggle waiting to happen.
You can say that again. Antony, he was at the height of his power, and suddenly this ambitious newcomer shows up.
Claiming Caesar's mantle.
Precisely, and their dynamic is fascinating. It seems, at least at first, Antony underestimated Octavian, saw him as young, inexperienced.
But Octavian, he was no fool.
Not at all. He was shrewd, a brilliant strategist. And he quickly starts gathering support.
Or who?
From those who saw Antony as, well, too ambitious. Too much like Caesar.
So you have these two powerful personalities battling for the soul of Rome.
Exactly. On one side, you've got Antony, the charismatic leader backed by the legions. On the other, Octavian, the calculating heir, building his own power base.
And all this is happening while Rome is basically falling apart.
That's right. The Senate's divided, factions are fighting for control, the provinces are restless. It's a volatile situation.
And what happens?
Well, this rivalry between Antony and Octavian, it eventually throws Rome into another civil war, a war that's going to redefine Roman power forever.
Another civil war.
And this time, they form the Second Triumvirate. It's this uneasy alliance between Antony, Octavian, and another powerful general, Lepidus.
The Triumvirate.
Supposedly to restore order. But really, it was just a power-sharing agreement fueled by ambition and mistrust.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, it was. They ruled through brute force, political maneuvering. They purged their enemies. Hundreds of senators, wealthy Romans, they were proscribed, eliminated.
A time of violence and terror.
Absolutely. It shows just how ruthless these men could be.
So what happens to Antony within this triumvirate?
Well, he gets control of the East.
The East.
A very strategic region. Vast resources, complex political alliances.
And that's where he starts building his own power base, separate from Rome.
Yes. Forging new alliances, consolidating his control.
And this is where Cleopatra comes back into the picture, right?
Exactly. Their relationship, it's legendary, of course, often depicted as this grand love affair.
The Roman general and the Egyptian queen.
But it was also a strategic alliance. A merging of power and ambition. Cleopatra, she was brilliant, a powerful ruler in her own right.
And she controlled Egypt, a wealthy kingdom.
Exactly. So for Antony, she represented a chance to solidify his control of the East, to access her resources, and maybe even challenge Octavian for control of Rome itself.
So it wasn't just a love story.
Not at all. It was a power play, a political and military partnership that threatened the very fabric of the Roman world.
Wow. And what does Antony do?
Well, they have children together. And Antony, he declares their son, Caesarion, to be the rightful heir of Julius Caesar.
Oh, that's a bold move.
Very bold. A direct challenge to Octavian's legitimacy.
It's like he's declaring war, not just on Octavian, but on the whole idea of the Republic.
He was envisioning a new kind of empire, one built on his alliance with Cleopatra.
But Octavian, he wasn't just going to stand by and watch.
Oh, no, not at all. He was a master manipulator. He used Antony's relationship with Cleopatra as propaganda, portrayed him as a traitor, seduced by an Eastern queen, abandoning his Roman duties for love and luxury.
Playing on those classic Roman prejudices.
Exactly. And it worked. Public opinion in Rome, it starts turning against Antony.
Octavian was setting the stage, wasn't he? Making himself out to be the hero.
The defender of Roman virtue. The only one who could save the Republic from this supposed Eastern threat. And so the stage is set for this final confrontation.
Antony versus Octavian. The fate of Rome hanging in the balance. Sounds like a cliffhanger.
Oh, it is. And next time, we'll dive into that final showdown.
So last time, we were talking about a Roman world on the edge of, well, collapse.
Oh, absolutely.
You had Antony and Cleopatra in the East, challenging the very idea of Roman power.
A direct threat, really.
And Octavian, back in Rome, playing the political game masterfully.
Oh.
Making himself out to be the savior of the Republic.
Exactly.
What a tense situation.
It was a powder keg ready to blow. You've got these two massive forces on a collision course, each one with a totally different vision for the future of Rome.
And it all comes down to one epic showdown.
The Battle of Actium.
Not just a battle of armies, but, a battle of ideology.
Absolutely. And it all plays out, not on land, but at sea.
The Mediterranean Sea. Talk about a dramatic backdrop.
Oh, incredible. Imagine hundreds of warships, sails billowing, oars churning the water, the air thick with tension, the sun glinting off armor, and the distant sound of trumpets echoing across the waves.
Wow, what a scene.
Breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. A clash of titans, a fight for survival, with the fate of Rome hanging in the balance.
And at the center of it all, Antony and Cleopatra.
Not just commanders, but symbols.
What do you mean?
Antony, the Roman general, represented this vision of Rome intertwined with the power and allure of the East. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, a woman of immense power and intelligence, fighting not just for survival, but for her legacy.
So how did this massive battle unfold? Did Antony, with all his military experience, outsmart Octavian?
It was a brutal battle. Ships clashing, fire arrows raining down, the constant din of combat, a chaotic scene. But in the end, Octavian emerged victorious.
Wow. What happened? What led to Antony's defeat? Bad strategy, not enough troops, or something else?
Well, there were a lot of factors, but a key moment was when Cleopatra decided to withdraw her fleet from the battle.
Why would she do that?
She saw that the battle was turning against them. She made a strategic retreat. And Antony, perhaps out of love, perhaps loyalty, followed her.
Wow.
It left his remaining forces exposed. They were overwhelmed by Octavian's navy.
So a combination of tactics, maybe some human emotion, and Antony's fate is sealed. What happened next?
Antony and Cleopatra, they retreat to Egypt, hoping to make a last stand.
A last stand.
But Octavian, he's not letting up. He invades Egypt, crushes Antony's remaining forces. Their dream of a Roman-Egyptian alliance, it was over.
A tragic end to a grand ambition. What happened to Antony and Cleopatra? Were they captured?
No, they chose a different path, a dramatic one.
What do you mean?
Antony, true to form, is said to have fallen on his sword, choosing death over surrender. And Cleopatra, the queen who defied Roman power for so long, well, she chose an equally dramatic exit.
Tell me more.
Legend says she allowed herself to be bitten by an asp, a venomous snake, a final act of defiance against the forces that were about to crush her.
Wow, what a dramatic end to a life filled with ambition, love, and in the end, defeat.
But their story, even in defeat, it continues to resonate, doesn't it?
It does. Mark Antony, he lived a life that's, well, larger than life. From his wild youth to his role in Senecar's Rise, his relationship with Cleopatra, his defiant last stand. It reminds us that history isn't just dates and battles. It's the stories of people who dared to challenge the way things were.
And even in defeat, even when the odds are stacked against you, there's something powerful in striving for something more, in fighting for what you believe in leaving your mark on history, even if it's not the mark you planned on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Mark Antony's life, it leaves you wondering, what if? What if he had won at Actium? What if his vision for a Roman-Egyptian alliance had become reality?
What if indeed? Would the world be different today? It's a question that sparks the imagination. It makes you think about those twists and turns of history, the enduring power of human ambition and passion.
That's the magic of history, isn't it? It takes us to different times and places, makes us question our assumptions, reminds us that the past is never truly past. It shapes our present, influences our future.
It does.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing life of Mark Antony.